Hi guys, I'm Ishan Joarder and I'm running for Congress in Florida's 14th district. Today I wanted to briefly touch on some of the impactful people that I've come in contact with in my life, and so some of the people that have had a big impact in my life growing up, or the person that I used to be, and the rebellious degenerate kid that I used to be, to who I am today, a successful father, a business owner, an entrepreneur. Growing up, I used to always get in trouble. I was the child that always got in trouble about everything. You can ask my parents, you can ask my brothers. I was the one that, weddings, I would be the one to, try to chase a frog and fall into the ditch on a big pile of poop. And, I was in a three-piece. This was in a village. Went to a wedding in a village, and I was probably maybe 6 or 7 years old. But I had a full suit on, and that would be me and my brothers and my family were, very, very formally dressed. And, I was in a full suit, dress shoes, dress pants, three-piece suit. So, it's in a village, dirt road, they don't even have like paved roads there. And, this was in Bangladesh, in a village. And, I saw a frog and I wanted to chase the frog. So I go over, I almost grab the frog, and there's a ditch there, and I fall right into the ditch. And it happened to be where I fell, there was human feces there. So, and it was like water and like mud with human feces. It was disgusting, gross. So I get up, and my entire pants, my suit, everything is covered in just human feces, just in the middle of the wedding. So I go find my mom. My mom is, just as upset as she can be, because we didn't bring a change of clothes. The closest place that I can get clothes, there's no like malls or anything in this village. It's like literally like dirt road and like brick roads that lead up to it. I don't remember clearly, but I'm pretty sure we like rode on like a wagon to get there. So the villagers have this thing called lungi. Lungi is like it's almost like a skirt kind of thing, but like it's like what men wears, and like these villages, it's you tie it around your waist. And so that's the only thing that they had. So I went from like a three-piece suit with like dress shoes and all of that to like sandals and a lungi that I borrowed from one of the villagers to wear for the rest of the wedding. But the joke is that I was always the kid that got in trouble, even doing the things that really weren't so bad, because as a 7-year-old, 5-year-old, whatever I was at the time, chasing frogs is a pretty, normal thing to do. But I just happened to be the one that would trip over, the side of a ditch and fall into a ditch right where human feces was. That would be my luck. So, I was always the kid that got in trouble. But, fast forward a few more years, getting into trouble landed me in probation. I was in probation at the age of like 13 or 14 years old. I landed myself on probation for fighting. I would get into fights after school pretty much every day after middle school. This was in middle school, Boca Middle. There's a park in the back of Boca Middle. It's called Meadows Park. And the bus loop was like right before this park's entrance. So, everybody in the school, all the fights would happen at this, like, just outside of this bus loop in the entrance of this Meadows Park. So I would get into fights all the time. So I was never the biggest kid. I was always the smallest kid in the group, but I was always I was not the one to ever back down. So since I was from a really young age, I was always the daredevil. Like, you'd see me, I would be the kid that would be jumping off like the third floor stairways and like jumping into the grass. I would be the one that climbs up on top of buildings and like jump off the buildings. So I was always like the daredevil. Like I always did the riskiest things. So that brought a lot of attention to me. I was everybody kind of knew who I was, and that in essence was I also caught with that. I also caught the bad attention of the kids that wanted the bullies that wanted to bully me. So, but I was never the one to back down from fights. Usually I always won the fights too. So one of these times when I'm, this is post probation. Now this is post like me already getting in trouble and being on juvenile probation for other the other kid that I hit, and then he got a couple of stitches, and I ended up winning the case, but I still landed me on probation. But one of the times I was fighting outside, this officer. This is my first contact with the PAL program, which had a huge impact in my life. One of the biggest impacts in my life was through the Boca PAL program. But this was my first contact with the Boca PAL program. His name was Paul Holland, and Paul saw me, basically caught me fighting outside. He was a police officer at the time. He's like, why don't you come to the boxing gym? So at this time, Paul would also, I would see Paul all the time. He would drive this like big, white van into school after school, and a bunch of kids would go in this, PAL bus, and they would take him to this PAL gym. I knew about the program. I never really got into it, never really, thought about getting into it because I was too busy, being in the streets and just being a bad kid. So Paul's like, why don't you come, you like fighting, why don't you come box? So, I was like, okay, I'll try that. So I went to started going to the boxing gym. Paul would pick us up after school in the bus, in the PAL bus. And I would go to the gym, and a few months into this, at first I just wanted to hit the bags. I didn't really want to box. There was another guy named Rick. Rick is an amazing guy. There's 3 people that I met in the PAL program that I still hold very close to my heart. 2 of them I still have in contact with. One of them passed away, unfortunately, a few years back. His name was Rick. But so Rick was Rick was the coach there, and Paul was obviously there. So at first I had no intention of boxing, but a few weeks into it, I was like, I'll give it a shot. So I got in the ring, and they were sparring. So I got in the ring, and I remember I was able to hit really well, but I didn't know if I could take a hit. I got out of the ring after sparring, and I looked at Rick. I was like, hey, I can take a hit. That was the first thing that I said to him after getting out of the ring for the first time. I was like, I could take a hit. And he would talk about that. Rick would talk about that late into his life and us growing up. But a few months into boxing, I started competing in all the local shows. I started doing very well. And then there was a show coming up in Augusta, Georgia, and I couldn't go. All of my teammates were going, but I couldn't go because I was on probation. So Paul wrote a letter to the judge requesting that the judge take me off of probation, and that I was a really good kid, and I've improved tremendously. I'm a very good fighter, and I have a very good shot at winning winning this tournament. So if the judge would take me off, Paul would take me under his wing and kind of basically look after me. The judge granted it. I went to Georgia. I actually ended up winning the entire tournament, and I stopped all 3 of my fighters 3 days in a row. So it was a very good tournament for me. And that kind of that set my life off in a different direction than it was headed to before meeting Paul. My whole team in the boxing team in that time are very close to me still, and we were, I would say, the best team that Boca PAL ever had. Actually, in a news article, Rick mentioned that. Rick is like, Boca PAL has never had a team like the one we had at the time. He's like, if I told my fighters to go swim in the Atlantic Ocean, they wouldn't ask me a question about it. They would straight jump in and swim the Atlantic Ocean. He mentioned that in a news article. I believe I still have the article. I'll try to link it to this video. But so that was my teammates in that whole in our team had a huge impact in my life because we went head first. We did not take no for an answer. We worked our butts off. We made sure that we were the best trained, the best conditioned. There was nobody else that can work harder than we did, and we knew that going into every fight. And other teams knew that too. When we would walk into a tournament, the talk of the tournament would be like, "Oh, that's Boca PAL." They knew who we were because we went in there always ready, and that was all credits to our coach Joe Ohms. He's an amazing guy, and the next video I'm going to talk about him a little bit more. But he was our head coach, and he had these runs called the Okadokes. Oh God, I'll talk about that in the next video. But excuse me. So the whole team that I had in Boca PAL are some of my closest friends that I have to this day. Marvin McGowan was an amazing fighter. This kid was just God-gifted, just talented, just an amazing fighter. My mom still talks about him to this day, of how amazing of a fighter Marvin McGowan is. Steve Jaffard, he is currently he's a pro boxer. He's a light heavyweight champion, And Steve was the hardest working kid that I've ever met in my life. This kid was the first one to come into the gym and the last one to leave. And it shows through his dedication to the sport. He is an amazing fighter, and he's a world light heavyweight champion, and he still is one of the toughest dudes that I know. Steve, funny story about Steve. He lived with his grandmother, and where the Boca PAL gym was, it was in a warehouse, and then in between Steve's grandmother's house and the Boca PAL, they were kind of right across the railroad tracks, but in between there was a wall. So Steve would every day hop this wall, come over to the gym, and he'd be the first one there, and he would always be the last one to leave. And I believe that discipline for Steve has still carried on to this day, and that's why he's such a great fighter that he is today. But the discipline that I learned, the hard work, the work ethics, the discipline, and the dedication to your craft, those values transition over to me in my professional life, in my career, and in the person that I became today. Had it not been for meeting Paul that day, and meeting with the PAL team that day after fighting in the Meadows Park, I think my life would be very different than it turned out to be today. So Paul had a huge impact on my life, and to this day I still speak to Paul. He's one of my closest mentors, and I value his knowledge and his wisdom and his guidance that he's given me throughout. He's a very close friend of mine now, and he was actually one of the first people to endorse me for my candidacy. So thank you, Paul. And I just thought that was an amazing story. It's such a for a child at that age, a teenager, you look up to authority figures, and police officers are the ultimate authority figure. So to me, having good police officers like Paul in a child's life could have such a big impact, because had it not been for Paul, my whole trajectory of my life would become very, very different. I was a very rebellious kid. If you told me no, I would definitely go do that. If you told me something couldn't be done, I would show you that I could do it. And I mean, and not in a bad way. It's not always bad. Some of it is also good, but I would have headed down, used it for a bad reason, versus now I use that the tenacity for a good cause, and for doing the right things instead of doing the wrong things that would land me in jail or get me in trouble. And Paul had a big impact on making that change in my life. So I think that police officers are very important in our society. The PAL program is one of the greatest one of the greatest programs that I've ever been in contact with. I actually see it as such a valuable part of our society and in my life, that I actually dedicated a lot of my time volunteering for the PAL program and raising funds for the PAL program. And I did a bunch of different many different events to raise money and awareness to the program, and sponsor a lot of these young boxers, and sponsor a lot of their tournaments. I got involved with the program on a different level because I believed in it so much, and because it had such a huge impact in my life. So thank you, Paul, for that. And I just thought that it's a story that I'd like to share, because that would definitely had a huge impact in my life, and it changed my life completely. From the kid that I was, who didn't really have a whole direction of where I wanted to focus all of that energy. I was just a child that I'll tell you another funny story. So I've always been into cars. I love cars. My first car was a Honda Prelude, and I souped it up a little bit. I did cold air intake. I put a music system in it, lights everywhere, had an exhaust on it, so it was kind of loud. So at the time we lived in this 2-story apartment building, and my room that I slept in was upstairs, so I'd have to climb through the balcony. I'd sneak the car out at night, basically. But in order for me to do that, I'd have to climb out of the balcony, get into the car, back the car up, and then push it down the driveway. And then once I would get far enough, I'd turn it on, and then I'd take off for the night. And one of the nights, I took my mom's car instead, because she got this rental car, and I ended up getting pulled over, and my 18-year-old friends all left. They let them walk, but my mom had to come get me in the car because I wasn't allowed to drive. Long story short, my mom was very upset, took my driving privileges away, and the time then I had to improvise on figuring out how to steal the car again. So one of the nights she would put the mom, if you're listening to this, turn it off now. So one of the nights she got this rental car because her car was in the dealer. They gave her a rental car, and I wanted to take that car. But my mom kind of got a whiff of how something was going to happen. I don't know how. I guess mother's intuition, but my mom at the time, she put the keys under her pillow where she would sleep. So I couldn't take the car, but I was smart and I knew that she had a spare key to the car also, to the car that was in the shop, not the new car that the rental car that she had. So what I did was I went into the closet, I took the key, the spare key that she had in the closet, and replaced it with her current keys that she had under the pillow. So she went to bed knowing that the pillow was there, and I couldn't go anywhere because the keys were there under the pillow, and that I didn't have access to the car. So at night, my mom peeked through my window to make sure that I was there, and I stuffed a pillow, and she had a wig, so I put the wig on the pillow, blanket over, and it looked like I was sleeping. It looked like I was sleeping. So, but I had her actual key. She had the spare key under her pillow, and I wasn't in the room. I climbed over I don't know how I did it. I think I had one side of the net that was opened up so that I could sneak out of the second floor and jump down to the first. And so I got in the car. I took the car and I left. And then she got the call from the police that I was driving, and I was in Fort Lauderdale. I was driving with my friends, and she got the call from the police that that I had stolen the rental car that she had, and she had to come get it because they wouldn't let me drive home with it. So Mom, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. I won't steal your car anymore, I promise, but I can't promise that for the grandkids that you have now. I'm sure they're gonna probably steal your cars in a couple of years soon. But yeah, I think that that was the kind of kid that I was, and a lot of the kids, I think a lot of kids could relate to this story because it's something that as a 13, 14-year-old, you're a rebel, and having police officers like Paul kind of guide you through those years of your life to be a productive member of society, to grow up and do the right things, and have an impact like Paul did in my life. I think it's huge. It's life-changing. One of the other things that I remember to this day with Paul is at the time when we were boxing, you share headgears with a lot of people. You're on the ground in the mats, and I got ringworm on my eye right over here. It's kind of gross now to think about, but at the time nobody really cared. I was a little kid. I was in sweat, and so I smelled like poop all the time, probably from the gym, because I spent 6-7 hours at the gym every day. So at the time it wasn't a big deal, but I remember I got this thing in my face, and I'm I couldn't figure out what it was. I would scrub it, put bleach on it, I couldn't get it off. And Paul looked at it, he's like, "Yo, you got ringworm." He's like, we need to sanitize everything, and I didn't have the money to go to doctors or anything like that. Not that I even cared to, but Paul took money out of the PAL program and had me go see a doctor and got me the treatment that I needed, the ointments and the treatment that I needed, got me new headgear, new gloves and all that stuff for myself, so that way I didn't spread it to the other kids there. But he did that out of, he did that from, the goodness of his heart, and I appreciated that. At the time, having somebody like that cares about you other than your parents is huge, because your parents, as a kid, you just think that your parents are supposed to do that. It's not something they must, it's not something that they do out of the goodness of their heart. It just, they have to do that because they're parents. That's how you feel. But it's not really the case. Me, now that I have kids, I see it very differently, and how much love and affection that my parents gave me was definitely more than usual. I see a lot of kids whose parents aren't very affectionate towards them. Like, my parents were very loving, and we grew up in a very good household, and I appreciate that now more than ever. Now that I have kids, I appreciate that a lot more. I understand the trouble that I put them through, and how much I put them through, and how much they love me. But Paul definitely had a huge impact in my life, and those small things that he did, I will remember for the rest of my life. I actually have the letter that he wrote to that judge gosh, it was almost like 20 years ago now. I still have that letter. My mom actually saved it, and she gave it to me about 2 or 3 years ago. She's like, hey, I have this letter from Paul. So I'm really glad that my mom saved that. I'll try to attach that to this video as well. But yeah, just a little bit about who I am and the troubles that I went through to grow up to be who I am today. It was definitely life-changing, and it could happen to anyone. And I appreciate all the things that all the people that are in my life had a small part of it to evolve me into who I am today. So I'm appreciative for all those people. Joe Ohms, Paul Holland, Bob Deneve is my I love Bob Deneve. Bob Deneve is the funniest dude you'll ever meet. He's retired now. He was the chief of he was a sergeant detective. And then he was the detective for chief detective for homicide for Boca PAL as well. But he's retired now. An amazing dude, funny dude. Joe Ohms, Rick Broberg, Rick Bromberg, Vince was another guy, another coach there. So I appreciate all those people that had a huge impact in my life. Wilson Feliciano, good dude, had a big impact in my life as well. So thank you to all those guys that helped me in those years of my life, because it had a huge impact in who I am today. And thank you for that. And I'll end this video there.